We've been studying the book of Mark on Sunday mornings, haven't we? And we have reached the latter half of chapter 7. And last week we spent the whole sermon looking at just 7 verses 24 to 30. We saw a Syrophoenician woman pestering Jesus so that he might cast out a demon from her daughter. Well, today we're going to zoom out a little bit. And we're going to find out how that miracle feeds into Mark's wider narrative. So we're going to speed up the pace. In fact, I don't know if you've noticed this, but the whole Gospel of Mark is a fast-paced affair. That's how it's supposed to be read. I wonder if you noticed as we read through it over the weeks, how many times Mark uses the word immediately. So jump back into chapter 6 a minute, and I'll show you. Chapter 6, verse 25. She came in immediately with haste to the king and asked, saying, "Give me the head of John the Baptist on a platter." Then verse 45, look, immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat. Verse 50, but immediately he spoke to them. Verse 54, the people immediately recognized him. Mark wants us to see the fast pace of Jesus' ministry. It's quick, it's exciting, it's urgent. And the reason he writes this way is because our need for Jesus is urgent, isn't it? Think of the devastating scenes from India this week. I don't know if you saw it, but on social media, it showed some of the passengers just before they're getting on the flight. And they're saying, "Oh, we've had a great time in India. We're coming home. We're going to tell you all about our adventures when we get back to London." There was a family of 5 leaving India, starting a new life in England. None of the people on that plane knew that they had an urgent need for Jesus. 4 minutes after takeoff, each one of them would stand before the judge of all the earth. Those who had faith in Jesus, those in whom Jesus was their king and saviour, well, they would be saved. Those who didn't would be rightly judged for their sin. Well, look, that's how urgent the gospel is. Have you understood how urgently you need Christ? Death can come at any point, can't it? Just like that plane, they had no idea, well, you have no idea when you're going to stand before the living gods. You need to come to Christ immediately. Okay, so this morning we're going to follow Mark's pattern, we're going to follow Mark's lead. So we're not going to go into too much detail in these different verses. Instead, we'll just skim through them and see what they reveal. So there are 3 miracles in this section, 7:24 to 8:10, and they reveal the title of our sermon: Jesus is the King of the world. So we've got 3 points and 2 lessons to close out with. So miracle number 1, what is it? Well, we looked at it last week. A demon is cast out of a little girl. Remember, Jesus had left Jewish territory, hadn't he? And he'd gone up north into Tyre and Sidon. And this was an unclean place as far as a Jew was concerned. And there he's approached by an unclean woman. And she pesters Jesus, "Cast this demon out of my daughter." But Jesus gives her what appears to be a harsh reply. He says, basically, "You're a Gentile dog. Why should I help you?" The woman humbly answers, verse 28, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." She says, "Have mercy, Master. Yes, I'm a Gentile dog, but don't the puppy dogs sometimes get the scraps thrown from the Jewish tables?" And Jesus, seeing her humility and her faith, grants her request. She goes home, she finds her little girl whole and well. That dark demonic force that held sway over this young lady has been forced out, it's been banished, because the king has commanded it so. She's no longer in the devil's grip. Okay, a simple miracle, but what does it mean? Well, in Mark 3, a few weeks back, Jesus tells the Pharisees exactly what it means. So in the past, when Jesus cast out demons, the Pharisees had claimed, remember, that he was able to do this because he was the chief of the demons. He was Beelzebub. That's what they said. But in Mark 3, Jesus tells them that's ridiculous. A man who goes around killing everyone in his family will soon lose all of his wealth, won't he? A house divided amongst itself cannot stand. So instead, Jesus tells the Pharisees, I am Satan's biggest enemy. Not only am I his biggest enemy, but I am in every way superior to him. Chapter 3:27, no one can enter a strong man's house and plunder the goods unless he first binds the strong man, then indeed he may plunder his house. Jesus says, I can walk into Satan's home, the world, and I can tie Satan up, and any one of his minions, any one of his demons, I can beat the life out of them, and I can take what I want. Because Jesus is stronger than Satan, and he wields more power, and he has ultimate authority over him. And the great thing about this miracle here in chapter 7 is that it's God revealing that this devil defeating power isn't exclusive to the Jews. God offers this gift to every tribe and nation. He provided it for this Canaanite woman, and of course he's provided it for us, hasn't he? I think we need to be reminded of the awesome power of Jesus over Satan. Now, I don't know how you see Satan's kingdom, Satan's influence. I suppose if you were brought up in the West, our culture doesn't really pay it that much attention. We don't like to talk about it. But there are dark forces, aren't there? Dark spirits at work in mankind. We see this in our community. Lives wrecked because people are in Satan's grip. They're under his sway. But here's the great news this morning. Jesus has power to cast out those demons, to rid people of the evil that they've wrapped themselves in. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He has not changed. His devil-defeating power is as potent now as it was then. And that means we, as his people, as his disciples, have great potential in bringing light to a dark world. And that's good news in an area like Lewisham, isn't it? And South London. Think of the darkness that blights the lives of the people in Lewisham. During the week, 3 police cars roared down my road and they stopped just outside the council estate, just down the road. 5 minutes later, I see a big guy in cuffs, being a nosy neighbour. I had a little walk down to have a look, didn't I? And I overhear the police officers asking him, how did that knife end up on your person? We live in an area of drug dealers, gangsters, and gang violence, don't we? Where young men think nothing of taking the life of a fellow human being. Why? Well, because they are chained to greed and power and pride. They've been totally captured by the wicked one. But Jesus, the King, can break those chains. He can cast out the wickedness of such men. And he does that when they hear and accept the gospel. Think of those we see on Lewisham High Street. There's always a group of 3 or 4 addicts, aren't there? I don't know if you've seen them when we do open air work. They're on the bench, can a special brew or white lightning in their hands. They're drunk by 10 a.m. And they've all got the same pathetic question as you walk by. Can you give me £5 for my electricity meter? They've been overcome by the darkness and the addiction that they're involved in. And they're heading for destruction. And to the outside world, their situation looks helpless. They're so far in the pit. They're so hidden in that gloom. You have to ask, can anything prise them away from it? From the booze, from the drugs? Well, yes, Jesus is the strong man who can waltz into Satan's kingdom and steal for himself whoever he wants. We have a great king who is more powerful than the wicked forces we see in our community. And therefore, Christian friend, you are the greatest hope for change in your community. The lost are crying out in pain, looking for answers. And you have them, because you have Jesus, you have the King. So share him. Let your light so shine amongst men. Okay, second point, miracle number 2, verse 31 to 37. What happens? Well, it's pretty straightforward. A deaf and mute man, is healed. So Jesus leaves Tyre and Sidon, and he enters the region of Decapolis by the Sea of Galilee. This is in the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee. And crucially, this is still Gentile territory. This is where Jesus had earlier cast out demons from that demon-possessed man. He cast out legions of them. And this time, verse 32, they brought to him a man who was deaf and had a speech impediment. So he couldn't speak, couldn't form words properly. And they begged him to lay his hands on him. And verse 33 to 36, Jesus does heal him. Jesus literally commands this man's organs to start working properly. And suddenly this man can hear and he begins to speak clearly. And Jesus tells him and his friends not to spread this news around. But this guy's just learned to speak, and now nothing is going to shut him up. And so he goes around telling everyone. Verse 37, they were astonished beyond measure, saying, he has done all things well. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. Right, well, what does it mean? Why does Mark include this? Well, little do these Gentiles know that as they advertise the miraculous work of Jesus, they're also fulfilling prophecy. They are inadvertently quoting Isaiah chapter 35. So if you've got a Bible, turn back there so we can see what's going on. Now, as you turn to Isaiah 35, let's remind ourselves of who Isaiah is and what he's doing. As you might remember from previous sermons, Isaiah prophesies just before the Assyrians come in and destroy the northern tribes of Israel. This is 700 years before Jesus is born. So he says the Assyrians are coming to destroy the northern tribes, and his message to the southern tribes, Benjamin and Judah, is that what's happened to your northern cousins is going to happen to you. The Babylonians this time are going to come eventually, and they're going to destroy you. And when the Babylonians come and take you into captivity, life is going to get so bad, so serious, that you're going to think that the Jewish nation is done for. You'll think that this is the end of Israel as an entity. But Isaiah's got some good news for them. He prophesies about life after the exile. So he says exile is coming, tragedy is coming, but I'm going to tell you about what's going to happen after. He says you will return to Israel, and God himself will appear to you. So after you've been in exile, God will once again do a great work in your midst. So listen to Isaiah 35 verses 3 to 6. Isaiah says, strengthen the weak hands, make firm the feeble knees. Say to those who have an anxious heart, be strong, fear not. Behold, your God will come with vengeance, with the recompense of God. He will come and save you. So God is coming to redeem you. He's coming to buy you back. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then shall the lame man leap like a deer, and the tongue of the mute sing for joy. So Christian friend, do you see again? Mark's big point here is that Jesus is the promised Redeemer from Isaiah. He is the Messiah that the Jewish nation have been waiting for. And here he is doing the very miracles that Isaiah prophesied about 700 years earlier. Here's a question though. If Jesus is Israel's Messiah, and Isaiah in his day is preaching to the Jews, then why is Jesus going to clearly Gentile territory to perform miracles for them? Why does he bother fulfilling prophecy in Gentile territory when Isaiah, on the looks of it, it's got nothing to do with Gentiles? I'll leave that hanging there. We'll answer that question in a minute as we look at miracle number 3. Miracle number 3, the feeding of the 4,000. The feeding of the 4,000 is very similar to the feeding of the 5,000. There are a few simple differences though. So, what we've got here is another feeding miracle. A huge crowd have been following Jesus for 3 days in verse 2. But Jesus is unwilling to send them away hungry. He says, if I send them home now, they'll faint on the way. Basically, some of them will collapse and die. So he miraculously feeds them using 7 small loaves and a few fish. And look, we have that phrase again. We saw it a few weeks back. The people were satisfied. And again, we got a big drop pin to Isaiah 55. Isaiah says the king, when he comes, will fully satisfy the people. And Jesus does. These people in this town, they're so full they cannot eat another bite. And then there are 7 huge baskets of food left over afterwards. And these baskets are massive baskets. So I don't know if you remember the film Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. But during that, his girlfriend hides in one of these baskets and he loses her and he's running around trying to find her. This is the sort of basket that was filled up. It's the same sort of basket that Paul escapes from Damascus in. They let him down in a big basket. And there are 7 of these leftovers, 7 baskets of leftovers left. So these are big. In fact, that means that there are more leftovers here than there are at the feeding of the 5,000. Okay, that's the miracle. People are fed again. But what does it mean? Well, back to Isaiah. As you read through Isaiah chapter 28 to 39, you find out that when the Messiah comes, he's going to bring prosperity. So Isaiah 35, the latter half of verse 6. Isaiah 35, end of verse 6. For waters break forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. Where are we told this miracle takes place? Well, just like when he was in Jewish territory, look at verse 4. Where in this remote place can anyone get enough bread to feed them? These people are in the middle of nowhere. They're in the wilderness. There's no bread. There's no food. There's nothing but jagged rocks and coarse sand. Isaiah 35, verse 7. The burning sand shall become a pool, and the thirsty ground springs of water. The Messiah, when he comes, will bring life and light to desolate places. Flick back to Isaiah 33, verse 16 a minute. If you're there. If not, just listen. Isaiah 33, verse 16. It's talking about the king. His bread will be given him. His water will be sure. Your eyes will behold the king in his beauty. They will see a land that stretches afar. Mark is making it clear, Jesus is making it clear to everyone who understands that he is the Old Testament Messiah. We saw this a few weeks back, didn't we? He is the king God promised. But, as we just mentioned, he's the king God promised to the Jewish people, isn't he? So why on earth is Mark making a big deal of telling us that he went and did these things for unclean, unsophisticated Gentiles? Well, have you figured it out yet? These 3 miracles teach us 2 crucial lessons. So we've had 3 points, 2 lessons. Lesson number 1, Jesus' rule isn't confined to Israel. Now, Israel today is even in the news, isn't it? It's always in the news. This week they've been at war with Iran. And there's lots we don't know about Israel. Christians will debate, what does it all mean? Has God still got a special place for them? How are they going to feed into the end times? There's a lot we don't know. But there's one thing we do know, one thing I know, one thing you can be sure of, is that Israel itself, the geographical area, is very small, isn't it? Wherever you want to choose to draw its borders, the actual land is tiny. It's only 290 miles long. So, basically, it's this bit of England, all right? The southern bit. And it's even thinner than that. Who did Jesus come to rule? Did he come to rule just a few thousand people on a little strip of land in the Middle East? Well, let's compare him to other historic figures. Who can tell me who this guy is? Who's good at British history? Anyone? No. Let's go back to school somehow. He is George the Fifth. Oh, that's close. George the Fifth. Now, George the Fifth, as an empire builder, as a ruler, he was the GOAT, the greatest of all time. In 1922, a quarter of the whole planet was under his rule, the British Empire. A quarter of the Earth's surface and nearly just under a quarter of the world's population. And they all called him king. The old phrase, the sun never set on the British Empire, was from that era. Who had Jesus come to rule over? Who will bow the knee to King Jesus? Well, Jesus isn't going to stop at a quarter of the world. No, he's come to rule the whole world. He's come to save and satisfy the needs of the whole world, of the people in the world. So look at Isaiah chapter 11. Look what it says, verse 10. In that day, the root of Jesse, who shall stand as a signal for the people. So the king from the line of David. Of him shall the nations inquire, and his resting place shall be glorious. So, when the Messiah comes, he's going to draw all people to him. The nations are going to inquire of him. Who is this man? Well, he's wonderful. We want him to be our king. The king of Israel won't stop at Israel's borders. The coming king will bring peace to all the nations. He'd go first, though, to the Jews, as we've seen in Mark. But then he'd go, as Paul says, to the Greek and the barbarian and the Brit and the Indian and the African and the American, wherever you're from. And eventually the earth will be filled with the glory of God as the waters cover the sea. And here's Mark, in Mark 8, giving us a sneak preview of what's to come. And therefore, everything Jesus does in Jewish territory on the west side of the lake, he goes on to do on the east side of the lake, on the Gentile side, because he is the king of both Jew and Gentile. Borders will not stop him. Okay, lesson number 2 then, and it ties in very much with what we've just said. Let's ask a very simple question. We've been talking about Isaiah. Who does Isaiah prophesy to originally? The Jews. Someone shouted the Jews. Well done. Yeah, the Jews, the Israelites. He says, Israel, your Messiah is coming. And here's what he's going to do when he arrives. He's going to make the deaf hear. He's going to make the blind see. He'll bring streams of living water and rejuvenation into desert places. The bread won't fail. Israel will see the king in all his beauty. But then Mark shows us something extraordinary. Mark shows us who or what Israel truly is. And here's the second important lesson then. We are spiritual Israel. That is, the church is the true Israel, we'll call it. Now, we've just said there is a nation, a political thing called Israel, a geographical place with a culture. It's got defined values, systems, a flag, a government. That's Israel in this world. But Israel, the place, is a product of this world, same way France or Germany or England is. It is earthly. It is of the flesh, Paul would say. But the Israel we learn about in Scripture transcends the meagre affairs of this world, doesn't it? And the promise Isaiah is making to Israel, he makes to us. He makes to spiritual Israel. That's what Mark, and crucially Peter, who Mark writes for, wants us to know. Peter wants earthly Gentiles to understand that we are as much a part of Israel as a native genetic Jew. How do we know this? Well, actually, Peter tells us himself directly in one of his epistles. So turn to 1 Peter chapter 1, and we're going to pick it up at verse 10. If you've got a church Bible, that's on page 1000 and 14. As you turn to 1 Peter 1, understand that Peter, when he writes this epistle, he writes an open letter to all the Christians in the first century. This letter will do the rounds of all the churches. People will copy it and they'll send it on. And it's addressed to a diverse range of people then. Ethnic Jews, Greeks, Romans, barbarians, Africans. They're all in the church. And look what he says. 1 Peter 1 verse 10. Concerning this salvation, so the salvation of your souls, the establishment of the church, the prophets who prophesied about the grace that was to be yours searched and inquired carefully, inquiring what person or time the Spirit of Christ in them was indicating when he predicted the sufferings of Christ and the subsequent glories. What does that mean? Okay, let's put some flesh on the bones. Let's take Isaiah, for example. So, Isaiah is a prophet, and at various times he receives words from God. He has dreams, he has visions, and he writes them down. He prophesies about what's going to happen. Jesus is talking to him about what he's going to do in the future. And Isaiah, of course, because he's a man, he wants to know more. So he says, Lord, you're going to rescue Israel. The king, the Christ, is coming to save Israel. Well, what do you mean by that? Who is Israel? And look at what Peter tells us. Verse 12, it was revealed to them, so it was revealed to the Old Testament prophets, that they were not serving themselves, but you, the church, in the things that have now been announced to you through those who preach the good news to you by the Holy Spirit sent from heaven. In other words, Isaiah, as he prophesied, might have first thought, I'm prophesying to my countrymen, the people in my clan, ethnic Jews. But Jesus is telling me, he would have thought Jesus is telling me about the political entity of Israel. So Isaiah is thinking a king's going to come like David, he's going to bring prosperity, and political Israel is going to be great. But then if Isaiah or Zechariah, Jeremiah, whoever it was, looked into it, after they prayed, and they prayed to know more, Jesus revealed the truth to them. Jesus reveals to them that Israel is going to transcend her borders. She's going to change from being fleshly to being spiritual. And the spiritual is so much better than the fleshly, isn't it? Or the worldly. She's going to go from being temporal to eternal. She's going to go from being defined by ethnicity to being defined by faith. Faith in the King. She'll move from vulnerability, because you can attack a land. She'll move from that to supremacy, because her king will be high and lifted up, and all things will be put under his feet. Therefore, says Peter, and you can't get clearer than this, all the Old Testament prophets that testify and talk about Israel, they're not about Israel. They're about Israel. They're about us. They're about the church. Isaiah is talking about us. Ezekiel is talking about us. Jeremiah is talking about us. Moses prophesies about us. Abraham is about us. The Old Testament points to the church. This is where prophecy finds its fulfillment. And I think that's really, really important for us to grasp. Understand that the grafting of the nations into God's kingdom was not an afterthought for God. It wasn't like God said, you know what, we'll send Jesus to the Jews and hopefully they'll accept him. But if they don't, well, maybe some other people around the world might give him a go. Some people think the Gentiles are God's plan B. Like we're second-class citizens, second-tier Christians. We're his compromise. So he's given us a bit of attention now, but eventually God will go back to his first love, the fleshly Jews. We're lucky they made a mistake. That's what some Christians think. That's nonsense. As Voddie Baucham says, we're not God's plan B, we're God's plan only. We were always God's plan. We were always on his minds. From before the world began, the triune God was determined to save a people for himself. And that people would be called Israel, would be called the church. saved, loved, and united by the King, the Son, the head of the church, Jesus the Christ, the King of the world. We really are the children of God. We really are his people. This was always the plan. Psalm 87, we're going to sing it to close. But listen to what it prophesies about. The psalmist says, glorious things of you are spoken, Zion, Jerusalem, O city of our gods. Among those who know me, so among those who call Jerusalem home, I mention Rahab. Rahab was a Gentile. Babylon, Gentiles. Philistia, Gentiles. Tyre, we've had it today, Gentiles. These Gentiles were born here, they say. And of Zion it should be said, this one and that one, all these Gentiles were born in her. Really, they're Israelites. The Most High himself will establish her. The Lord records as he registers the peoples, this one was born there. Singers and dancers alike say, all my springs are in you. Christian friend, we were always God's plan.